Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about a story that's shaking up not only the entertainment world, but the whole world. Recently, one of the biggest stars of American Pickers, Mike Wolfe, got a shocking sentence of life in prison, but the charges against him are so scary they could be from a high-risk horror movie. He is accused of smuggling artifacts across countries, hidden in evidence about the death of a famous historian, and even manipulating the antique auction market. Millions of people are watching, but is Mike Wolfe really the mastermind, or is he just a victim of a dangerous system? If you find this story interesting, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel to find out the answers. In today's video, several major news outlets reported at the same time that Mike Wolfe, the famous face of the reality show American Pickers, had been sentenced to life in prison. The charges sound like the plot of a high-risk horror movie. International artifact smuggling hidden in evidence about the death of a famous historian and manipulating the antique auction market where the value runs into tens of millions of dollars. For millions of viewers, Mike Wolfe has always been seen as a heritage enthusiast who travels across the U.S. to rediscover items that have stood the test of time. But the truth that came out in his 46-day trial painted a different picture. He was a cold, calculating man with ties to secret Middle Eastern antique smuggling rings Europe. On June 17, 2023, a neighbor in Bloomington, Indiana, called the police to report a strange smell coming from the basement of Professor Harold Clemens's house. Professor Clemens was a retired historian who had taught at the University of Chicago and specialized in Civil War artifacts. When the police went inside, they found Clemens dead on his back, holding a small object in his right hand, a silver pocket watch with the words RK-187 engraved on it in a way that was hard to read. At first glance, it looked like the natural death of an elderly man who lived alone, but the watch shouldn't have been there. A week later, the Savannah National Museum sent out an internal memo that was quickly leaked. The watch had been part of the Battlefield Heritage Collection and had gone missing in 2019 during an unknown archival transfer. The incident was never made public because the museum didn't want a scandal until the item suddenly showed up in the hands of a dead body. This information quickly spread on social media, but what really started the fire was someone on Reddit, calling themselves Gear Ghost 82, wrote, "I swear I saw this exact watch in an unaired episode of American Pickers when Mike visited a farm in Kentucky. It was in his palm, and he even said the watch tells stories." Within 48 hours, dozens of other people came forward saying they had seen the same item on the show, or at least a similar clip that went viral on YouTube in 2021, but was later deleted. Other users added, "I saw it displayed at Antique in July 2023. The FBI quietly started an investigation with the International Artifact Smuggling Task Force. The operation, called Rust Rail's main goal was to find out if Mike Wolfe was connected to an illegal federal and possibly international antique smuggling network." One of their first leads came from a 14-minute video of History Channel that was leaked by a former employee. In the video, Mike Wolfe is seen negotiating to buy a military pocket watch from an unidentified man inside a warehouse near Paducah, Kentucky, owned by Elgin, U.S. manufacturer. Mike's voice can be heard saying, "I know this piece has been handled by an officer. It definitely has historical value. I won't ask you where you got it." What made people even more suspicious was the possible connection between Harold Clemens and Mike Wolfe. In 2017, Clemens made a vague comment about some artifacts that should never be handled by police, be sold because they carry pain that money can't buy. An internal email from Clemens' computer that was found after he died showed that he had even stronger suspicions. In a message to a close friend, he wrote, "I think I found a chain of illegal transactions involving a famous TV personality. I'm thinking about whether to tell federal authorities." This email was sent 3 days before he died, but there were no signs of violence. The autopsy report showed a small bruise on the back of Clemens's head, possibly from a fall or impact before he lost consciousness. No one was charged with his death, but the investigation changed direction, and Mike Wolfe was put under special federal surveillance. That small watch, which was once just a small detail, became the spark that brought the whole antique empire to justice right after the silver pocket watch showed up. The federal investigation team started looking again at all the episodes of American Pickers that had already aired. They also made formal requests for internal records from History Channel and the production company. The FBI quickly found a problem. Between 2020 and 2023, over 40 items that Mike Wolfe and the film crew had bought were never shown on TV. Some of them were filmed with simple receipts, but no clear records of where they went afterward, including the fateful pocket watch. The secret investigation code came to rust. Rail meant the path of items buried in warehouse basements or even the underground cellars of antiques. At first, the investigation team couldn't get in touch with Mike Wolfe directly. Instead, they quietly followed one of his backstage assistants, Craig Salinas, who was the production team's driver and main logistics handler. During a nearly 6-hour surveillance session in southern Missouri, Salinas was caught driving a truck labeled Antique Archaeology to an empty warehouse that wasn't on any maps. Official records show that the local police were asked to help by pretending to be a construction safety inspection team. When they got there, they saw a bunch of sealed wooden crates full of things from the 18th and 19th centuries, including at least 3 things that the FBI said were stolen from a museum in Georgia. The investigation made a big step forward when they got search warrants for 2 private storage facilities registered under a company called Time Vault Logistics LLC, which was just a front company that Mike Wolfe owned shares in. At the first warehouse in Ohio, many undocumented antiques were found, including Civil War pistols, torn handwritten manuscripts, and a nearly 1-metered all-Egyptian statue carefully stored in a shockproof crate. An internal report said that this statue matched one that was stolen from the Luxor Museum in Egypt in 2011. When the FBI tracked the money, they found that Mike Wolfe owned at least 5 small companies set up in tax havens like Bis Malta and the Cayman Islands. Nearly $7 million was sent between these companies through antique transactions, but none of them involved licensed appraisers or reputable auction houses. Notably, a Swiss bank account in Wolfe's name received a $150,000 transfer from someone connected to the underground antique market in Aleppo, Syria, which had been accused of being a hub for stolen cultural artifacts during wartime. What investigators found most surprising was how Mike set up the whole operation. Official members of the crew were in charge of transporting the goods after filming. Contracts were signed using virtual fax apps, and payments were made in cash or cryptocurrency. The FBI decided to break into the network by going to an antique store that Wolfe had been to before in New Mexico. On the night of December 3, an undercover agent met with Mike informally, and Mike was heard saying that not every item should be shown on TV. In the hours following the meeting, the FBI conducted emergency searches at 3 locations connected to antique archaeology. One of these was a secret warehouse in North Nashville, where they found a list of 17 encrypted handwritten documents containing artifacts, black market price codes, and transaction dates. You won't believe what they found. Like and subscribe to the channel to keep up with this exciting story. The list was a pencil note found in Mike's notebook said, "They'll never understand this is about heritage, not money, but heritage cannot be an excuse to break the law." With so much evidence, including undocumented artifacts, shady accounts, and notes showing concealment, Mike Wolfe was officially named the main suspect in what could become the biggest scandal in U.S. reality TV history. On January 9, 2025, Mike's federal trial began in Chicago with better security. Outside the courthouse, people held up signs that said "Free Mike," because they thought it was all a mistake. But what happened inside the courtroom shocked everyone. The 39-page indictment included 6 main charges, such as illegally transporting antiques, international cultural heritage trafficking, tax evasion, obstruction of justice, money laundering, and indirectly hiding evidence in a suspicious death. The proposed sentence was life in prison without the chance of parole. The prosecutor started by showing pictures and clips from previously unreleased videos of Mike Wolfe making shady deals in places that weren't officially filmed by the show. In one of these videos, Mike was seen giving cash to a Syrian man at a Detroit garage in exchange for a small box of fake Roman coins. The prosecutor said that this wasn't Mike Wolfe collecting antiques, but rather a business model based on illegal activity that looked like it was legal on TV. Frank Fritz's testimony was a devastating blow to Mike's defense. After leaving the show after many seasons as co-host, Frank agreed to testify, and what he said shocked everyone in the courtroom. "We used to promise we would only collect what was legal, but over time everything changed. Mike became obsessed with things no one else had. For the show to stay alive," he added, "we had to dig deeper, both literally and figuratively." Frank carefully remembered an event from 2021 when they got a wartime diary in Arkansas. Mike later took it, and no one knew where it went, but Frank later saw a copy of that same diary on the black market for 15 times its original price. The defense didn't offer a direct response to the physical evidence. Instead, they focused on making Mike seem like he was stuck in a system he couldn't control, saying that all transactions were handled by the logistics team and that Mike was just an antiques fan and not a mastermind. Mike Wolfe stayed silent for almost the whole trial. Mike's eyes were blank with emotion. On the 31st day of the trial, when asked if he wanted to speak to the jury, he looked them straight in the eyes and said, "I never thought of myself as a criminal. I just wanted to speak out for what others ignored. If that makes me guilty, I accept it." That shocking statement was in the news, and people were divided on whether to praise or condemn Mike Wolfe. On the day of the sentencing, the judge read the verdict in just over 4 minutes, based on the amount of evidence, the level of organization, and the results, especially the hiding of artifacts from international cultural theft. The court sentenced Mike Wolfe to life in prison without parole and took away all of his ownership rights to the ancient archaeology program and brand. In the gallery, an older man broke down in tears. He had been a big fan of for 10 years. On fan pages across social media, he had praised Mike, but now that praise was either fading or turning into a state of honor. But there was one bigger question. If Mike was the mastermind, then who was behind it all? The empire fell apart, and just 3 days after Mike Wolfe was sentenced, History Channel officially canceled American Pickers and removed all related content from its streaming platform. YouTube, which used to have a lot of followers, deleted old videos without warning. Ancient archaeology became a blank screen with just one line reading, "Temporarily suspended." A name that used to be associated with American TV culture disappeared so quickly that it almost seemed like it had never been. The FBI locked down both of the display locations in Iowa and Tennessee, which Mike had called sacred spaces. For history buffs, the secret warehouse in North Nashville, which had been used as an artifact collection center, was given to the Heritage Management Bureau. A month-long inventory showed that many things were missing. Some of the items had fake papers, unclear provenance, and were confirmed to be religious artifacts from war zones like Iraq, Syria, and Yemen. One of these was a marble sculpture thought to belong to an Ottoman royal tomb that was stolen in 2003. The antique auction market temporarily shut down, and big companies like Saab and Christie's said they were reviewing all transactions that were connected to Mike Wolfe in some way. Several large transactions worth hundreds of thousands of dollars were canceled. and private collectors started to worry that the items they had bought might have been tampered with. Fans thought Mike had been made the scapegoat for a long-running system that operated in the shadows of art, politics, and the media. On platforms like X and Reddit, public debates looked at inconsistencies in the investigation, suggesting that Mike might have accidentally revealed information that someone didn't want to be revealed. One detail that continued to fuel public debate was a list of 17 documents found in Mike's warehouse, along with the coded transactions and markings on artifacts. The last page had a handwritten note that said Q7R3. VTI experts and conspiracy theorists rushed to figure it out. Some thought it was an abbreviation for a secret organization that dealt in high-end artifacts and might have something to do with religious authorities. One popular theory said Vatican meant the Vatican, which has never been officially recognized. However, there was no proof. This code made the story much more complicated than just one man and one TV. The forensic investigation team also released Mike Wolfe's personal notebook, which was full of notes about things like the scene in episode 312, where the old truck was cut up, or tracking with the leopard skin collection holder. One page had a single handwritten sentence that said, "They'll never understand not all of the past should be brought to light." The page was tightly folded and stuffed between unrelated papers, making it look like Mike wanted it to be found at the federal prison in Tiro, where he is serving his sentence. Officials have blocked all media access to the case, and an anonymous former associate said that he didn't talk to anyone, ate alone, went alone, and didn't make any special requests, as if he knew the sentence was coming or had agreed to it. In March 2025, during a closed hearing, an FBI representative said that people involved in the case were still being watched, which suggests that the investigation was still going on. One of the unofficial people subpoenaed was the former program director at History Channel, who was in charge of looking back at the episodes that were cut. No one is sure if some footage was deleted, edited, or buried on purpose. To understand how it all happened, you have to go back to the beginning, before the cameras started rolling, before the $1 million brand went back to where Mike Wolfe started. Mike Wolfe, the man responsible for the tragedy, was born in 1964 in Joliet, Illinois, into a poor working-class family raised by a single mother with 2 siblings. They lived off of used items from neighbors. From a young age, Mike was drawn to things that other people had thrown away. While his friends collected baseball cards, young Mike scoured schoolyard trash heaps for broken radios, old bikes, and anything with gears. His favorite saying back then was, "If people think it's worthless, it's worth keeping." When American Pickers first aired on the History Channel in 2010, Mike was in his 40s, but his eyes lit up when he saw an old license plate. He was still like a child. With his partner Frank Fritz, Mike drove thousands of miles across the U.S., bringing life back to abandoned garages and barns, to find treasures from the past. He was admired for his knowledge, his kindness to sellers, and his genuine interest in every item. But maybe that interest went too far. Someone who worked with Mike in the early years said that he didn't just collect things, he collected memories. As the show became more popular, there was more pressure for each item to be better than the last, so Mike started looking in places no one was supposed to go, e.g., evidence lockers, black markets. No one is sure when the line was crossed, but one thing is for sure. He wasn't just looking for things that no one else wanted. He was also after things that people were afraid to keep. Maybe Mike thought he was doing the right thing by keeping pieces of history from being forgotten. But the law doesn't care about personal beliefs. Now Mike Wolfe is prisoner number 42799D54, and the name that used to stand for American heritage has been erased from all public platforms. There is still the question of whether Mike Wolfe used the past to make money, or was the last person brave enough to keep it alive, no matter what. Mike Wolfe went from traveling across America to collect memories to becoming a national TV star, and then being found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. His story shows that the line between passion and wrongdoing isn't always as clear as we think it is, and the truth will always find its way back to the Light, what do you think about Mike's sentence? Leave your thoughts in the comments section below this video on whether you think Wolfe is a victim of the system or someone who has gone too far. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next exciting video.